ado, please give a round of applause for Randy Keys and Jimmy Hasson.
One of the things that have changed in kingfishing, a lot's gone on in 30 years. 30 years ago, most boats were single engine. If you had two engines, it was a rarity. The first 31 Fountain was the first kingfish boat out there. A lot of things have changed. One of the other things Jimmy and I were talking about today, in the old days, most of your bait was caught with a cast net. Nobody used blue runners. You were catching thread fins, you were catching pilchards, you were using, and your equipment was a lot different too. You want to show them some of the, Jimmy brought some old school kingfish rods and stuff.
This is a really old kingfish rod that I still use, don't get me wrong. This is one of the first, but you can see how thin it was because we were dragging thread fins, things like that. So you can see what the difference is compared to.
They can't hear you, Jimmy.
Compared to what we're using nowadays. You can see the difference. Okay, back in the day, we only used kitchen thread. We matched the hatch. Back in the day, there was plenty of thread fin, everything packed on the beach. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, we'd go out John's Pass, all we used was spoons. By the time we got to Blinds Pass, filled a garbage can. I mean, that's the way it was. So things have changed a lot.
And people have always live bait kingfish, way back. We had, as a matter of fact, the old salt record was Ron Kingston, and he had a 76-pound kingfish caught at the Skyway. He had other, Gene Turner was catching 66-pounders, Billy Harris caught 63-pounders. They were all caught in between the Skyway and Egmont. That was where everybody fished. Long about the 70s, the roller rig, gill nets, and everything started to really wipe out the kingfish population. And people like Gene Turner got very active in trying to bring kingfishing back to where it was. The first legislation to protect kingfish was enacted in 1983. It was pretty effective because by the time 1989, the late 80s got around, kingfish population had come back enough so that over here, we could have kingfish tournaments. I think the first one was in 91. As I said, back then, two motors was a rarity. Everybody was in a 17 to a 20-foot boat with a single engine. Most of them didn't have T-tops. There's a lot of other things that have changed. Back then, nobody ever heard of a 12-foot gaff. You were using 4-foot gaffs for the most part, 8-foot if you were lucky enough to have one.
A lot of the things that have changed, like tackle. Gene Turner and a bunch of my other friends, we didn't have wire leaders. We didn't use stinger hooks. They used a double hook rig. So it's kind of like a snapper rig. So Gene was dead serious. It's the only way to catch kingfish. So basically you have a lead hook and a thread fin, and then you have a hook hanging. And he swore that you get more bites than using wire. So wire came about, and then it's the stinger. But all the times that I've fished, I would say 95 to 96%, the lead hook is always in the kingfish's mouth. So the stinger just, to me, turns the kingfish's head. So when it does that, he's going to be hooked in the mouth. I've never really caught a lot of kingfish. Small kingfish, yeah, you can foul hook them. Big kingfish, no. You're not gonna bring a big kingfish who's hooked in the skin on his back. So basically, now the things that have changed is hook sizes. And it's basically the bait that we use now. Back when we're talking about, everything was on the beach. We used threadfin, sardines, Spanish sardine, all that, just the small bait. And I mean, for us to go out more than 5 miles, never happened when kingfishing started back in the day. So, but here again, climate change, this, that, the other, it all changed. That's where we fished. Bay, up and down the beach, kind of like tarpon fishing. So
nowadays, you'll find that even inshore, there's a wider variety of baits. You know, we would occasionally catch a few ladyfish in the net. We had to put them out first thing because they wouldn't live very long after they had been netted. So we had to do that at daybreak. When the first hour of the tournament started, that's when you'd put out your ladyfish. Later on, people got hip and started, you know, catching ladyfish with love lures and stuff like that. Taking good care of them, keeping them in the live well. Back, like I said, back in the old days, we were just netting bait. Nobody hook and line bait. You take jigs out with you, and I'd wind up standing in the front of the boat jigging while we were fishing, just because we thought it created activity enough that might, you know, draw kingfish in. And you jig up cigar minnows and Spanish sardines, stuff like that at the drop. And but for the most part, all our bait was caught in the net.
I remember before sabikis came out, this was back when I was tarpon fishing, I used to take little gold hooks, make a loop, hang it on there, and a buddy of mine was fishing with me. I said, here, just drop this down. He goes, well, where's the bait? I said, you don't need bait. And we just started jigging and pulling up pinfish, all kinds of bait, which is little gold hooks. So some of the differences now, I mean, the sabikis, things like that to catch bait. A lot of people still use teeny little sabikis. And yeah, you can catch sardines, you can catch, you know, cigar minnows, all that. When you're tournament fishing nowadays and King of the Beach, forget it. If you don't have anything a foot or bigger, forget it. You don't want to spend your time, when you're tournament fishing, you do not want to spend your time catching an 18-pound fish if you want to win. Okay? So I fished all of this coast, all the other coast, all the way to North Carolina, to Biloxi. It's very difficult because, believe it or not, wherever you go, there's a different bait to catch kingfish. So, you know, North Carolina, South Carolina, it's all pogies, which is shad to us. Okay? So
They're a lot smaller up there too.
yeah, they're smaller. You basically catch them in the surf. So it's very difficult because you gotta run the boat to keep from getting pushed on the beach because they like to slough. So the things that have changed here is, you know, they use like ribbon fish and shad. We don't have ribbon fish here. I consider them eels, okay? And the only place that I have ever heard that you can catch them here is up in Clearwater in the bay, which is little grass eels. But ribbon fish, they catch them at night off of the piers up on the East Coast. They use them for bait. I've used them here. I've never had any luck with them because I think it's something that's foreign to the fish here. I really can't answer it, but I've never ever done well. I've done well with them on the other coast, but not here. So, like I say, when we first started all this, we used small bait. Elephants eat peanuts. You know, I'm not saying you can't catch a big kingfish on a small bait, but ladyfish is my choice. A ladyfish you can put on a downrigger. It'll last probably over half a day, as long as he's down. You put it on the surface, you get about an hour. That's it. So blue runners are the hardiest kingfish bait you can catch. Okay? And I'll show you guys what I'm using to catch them, the big ones. Because everybody wants to use those little sabikis, and that's not the way to catch a big blue runner. But I like the shoulder hook, that's what I call it. I don't nose hook them, because nose hooking, you're dragging them in a straight line. If I hook them in the back of the head, they can swim on their own. So it makes for a nice spread when you're looking for big fish. And like I said, the bigger the fish, the better. When you're tournament fishing, not when you're fun fishing. Because back when all this started, we used to use spinning rods all the time. That's all we used. So, and to me, I still love spinning rod fishing. But you're gonna ask him. I mean, you gotta teach somebody how to do it with a spinning rod. Because every time you crank and he's taking line, you've created a loop. So,
One of the others, we had never thought about using blue runners because we didn't fish offshore. So back in 1990, I go out to Cocodrie, Louisiana, because my friend Harry Thomas wanted to fish the oil rigs in Louisiana, and I said, I'm in. You know, we went up there, we took a 21-foot fix, and went out there, and I mean, there are giant schools of blue runners, bigger than this room, bigger than the whole block of East and West Parsley, just as far as the eye could see. And great baits, and that's everything that they used up there. That's the other thing that Jimmy says about matching the hatch for where you're fishing. We've had lots of luck with pogies on the East Coast, pogies and ribbonfish. You'll also have luck inshore here with the shad. I remember when shad was the prime bait on the Clearwater hard bottom, you know, when we were fishing up there.
Shad is a great bait. It's not like it used to be. Because I used to use shad tarpon fishing. That was the bait. We used to net it. So kingfish, I mean, how many people have caught kingfish while they're grouper fishing? I mean, them things are just hungry. So what I will tell you, if you're somewhere and you're tournament kingfishing and there is no food, they're not there. I got news for you. Kingfish have to have food. Now, it doesn't mean they're gonna eat because the food's there. They're gonna eat when they wanna eat, okay? But they like being at the front door at the restaurant. So, I mean, always remember that. I mean, activity. Here, back in the day, there used to be glass minnows come streaming into the bay. And what was eating it? Mackerel. And what was behind it? Big kingfish. So wherever you find mackerel activity, a lot of bait, you're gonna find fish. You're gonna find it. So, I mean, people get stuck at a spot. I mean, but kingfish are gonna eat when they wanna eat. So that's what I will tell you. Tournament kingfishing is boring because you're looking for one fish. Okay, I can go out and catch all the kingfish I want, you know, schoolies, because they're children, they're schoolies, they'll eat whenever. But big kingfish, nope, they eat when they're hungry. That's it. Bottom line.
Another thing that we used to do years ago was when we left the dock, we'd have to cover our bases. So we always had one tackle box that had spoons in it, just in case we couldn't catch bait. We also might take some ballyhoo or cigar minnows. We had sea witches. We had various things that we would do to troll for kingfish. Sometimes when we were out there and it was really rough, and when you're in a little 17-foot boat, you get out there and you're in 4 to 6s, it can get pretty hairy. We would troll live bait when we were going down sea, and then pull that in and then put out spoons and planers while we trolled into it. You know, it was just something that you had to do because you couldn't compete. We had lots of experiences out there that were, you know, most of the time you gotta fish on the day that the tournament is, whether you want to or not. We'd have pull out the pass and you'd see them hound teeth out there on the horizon, and you just go, Jimmy, let's go down the skyway.
Many a days like that. I will tell you, this is one thing that I have done a lot. I always ran the boat, okay? So running the boat, you learn a lot of different tricks, okay? When we had twin engine boat or whatever, first thing that would happen, depending on where we were, trim tabs go down, motor goes in gear, the one that we're not running, okay? A lot of times I drift. I leave a motor running and just straighten myself out, okay? When you're tournament fishing, dead calm is ideal. The other day, 2 weeks ago, I was in the channel inside the Skyway, had no engines running, nothing, and I was going almost 3 knots just because of the current. But that's as slow as I could go. So trim tabs down to slow me down as much. I've drug buckets, 5-gallon buckets, and a bedtimes with a single engine. I put buckets out to slow me down. So the best way to keep your bait alive is to go with the current, okay? If you go against the current, you're gonna kill your bait. If you're like in the channel, like in the Skyway channel or Egmont, anywhere like that, you're gonna kill it. The ladyfish on a downrigger, you get half a day out of them. I can't answer you why but they'll survive like nobody's tomorrow. They thrive on it. That is my preferred bait on a downrigger, is ladyfish. We've trolled bluefish, we've trolled trout, don't do well. But we always keep a rod ready with a spoon and stuff to catch a mackerel. You know, and when we catch a mackerel, we shoulder hook him behind the head so he can turn his head so he's not getting drowned. And blue runners are the best. The hardiest bait you can get is blue runner. The bigger the better. So, like I say, when we tournament fish now, we don't use thread fin, we don't use cigar minnows, none of that. I mean, it's the game to play. So, it's a good deal if you're into it. I would, like I said, don't get me wrong, elephants eat peanuts. So, always remember that. I mean, I've hooked double thread fins, a lead hook, and a stinger hook. 2 baits. Thread fins, whatever. But you gotta be going with the tide. Can't go against, so they'll kill themselves. So.
You wanna show the, what you're using for the blue runners and what you're using with the, stinger rigs and stuff?
So when I first started this, all we used was 29-pound wire. And I caught more 40, 50-pound kingfish than you can imagine. So nowadays, I stepped up to 40-pound, okay? And only because of bait size. Because back in the day, we were using thread fin, Spanish sardines, whatever we could catch. So I stepped it up a little bit, and the biggest thing is the flexibility in wire. A lot of people now have gone to 7-strand. You know, it's a stranded wire, and you can tie it. I'm not a fan of it, okay, because you have to pre-tie it, and it's tough to tie in a short period of time. So usually what I do is have my lead wires all tied, and then I have stingers ready to go to adjust to the bait. Because we use so many different baits, and they come in all different sizes. Ladyfish, I mean, we catch ladyfish yay big, yay big. So now I gotta tie 3 stingers onto this ladyfish. So it's not like the old days where you just tied all these rigs that are all the same size. So nowadays you have to be prepared as soon as you get on water, or you've caught them the day before. So you kind of have to judge, you know, where you want them. Because you don't want this stinger where his tail is, where he's going to constantly whip it. It's going to come out and he's going to foul hook. So that's why I just have a box of these laying there so I can adjust. I mean, it doesn't take me 2 minutes to tie it and rig it after I've got the nose hook. And the nose hook is different, okay? A ladyfish is going to take a bigger hook. A mullet's going to take a bigger hook. If I'm going to shoulder hook a blue runner, it's a smaller hook. So I have all this stuff already pre-made. That's probably the quickest thing. So, you know, it's up to you. I mean, I'm a true wire guy. I've always been. Kingfishing is finesse. I'm going to tell you that right now. Okay? If I can't take 2 fingers and pull the drag out, or if my big blue runner is taking a little bit of line, I tighten the drag. Barely. When a kingfish hits, he's going to haul butt. Okay? The ideal of true kingfishing is you let him wear out. Period. You chase him, never, ever, ever drop the pole to him. Always keep the tension on the kingfish. The minute you drop that rod and reel, that hook's going to fall out. Always keep the pressure on the fish. You don't have to jerk him, you don't have to pull, you don't. Let him wear out. Then shallow water kingfishing, he's going to run. You're going to get him to the boat. He's going to see the boat and say, hey, I don't like you. I'm going to run again. And then by the time you get back up to him, you chase him. Boom. Always keep the pressure on. Catch him. Get up to him. He'll start around turning. And pretty soon he's right there. Boom. Yeah, done. The harder part is the deep water. If you're in a channel like the 90-foot hole, anything like that, he's going to run. He's going to be a pain in the butt, because then he's going to go, okay, fine, I'm going to go down 80 feet. Now it's the pump-up game. And as you're pumping, he's doing this the whole time up. That's what kills you. It takes forever, and you have to deal with the tide. So you have to constantly keep the boat's nose on him, because you do not want him going to the back of the boat. So the important thing is a third person. When we hook up, somebody better be getting the lines up, and we always leave one out in the back. Why? Because there's another one around. He's gonna hit it.
I fished with Jimmy for years and years. He's the only person who does not let you put a clicker on, because he thinks that puts too much drag on the fish. And he says, if you're not awake enough to hear that reel screaming without the clicker, then you're sleeping on the job.
It's true. I mean, a lot of people like to hear that clicker go, yeah! And I'm like, no, how about, whoo? If you can't hear that, then you don't need to be fishing with me, because we're catching the big fish. So, like I say, tournament kingfishing is a blast. It's boring. We're in the wrong spot. There's no fish. Come on, fish, bite. It's my daughter. I mean, like I said, Randy and I, we fished the circuit, okay? We fished the SK circuit. Our dear friend Ira, who's passed since, but we fished up and down the East Coast and Biloxi. We won the national championship for the SKA. It's hard. It's learning different things in different areas. I fished for the Hydrosport fishing team. So we shared information, and like I said, there's so many different things and different ways to fish on their coast versus our coast. We enjoyed it. I mean, we're old school. I mean, like I said, there's so much new stuff that's going on now. I mean, I still do it, and yeah, I've learned new stuff, and I've tried new stuff. I still tell you, my way still works. I mean, if you were here last month, Harrington's son,
Oh, Ryan?
Ryan, he still swears by the old school, because we taught him. So it's all good. You know, if you guys got any questions, we'll be more than happy to answer them.
Yeah.
You guys ever, you're talking about trolling, and do you ever basically anchor, chum, and float balloons?
Yes. Yeah, in certain conditions we do that. Jimmy's favorite's a red balloon. He thinks that kingfish see red better than anything else. But yeah, anchoring up and chumming, it's great in a lot of areas. You know, right now, like this tournament here, King of the Beach, you're gonna have so many boats that sometimes, you know, you can offend other people by anchoring up and chumming. You know, you can, you know, say, hey, that's okay, you know, but because a lot of people will be trolling certain areas, you'll pull up, you'll be right in their trolling pattern and anchor up on it. I don't usually recommend anchoring on wrecks because you're gonna have a lot of barracuda and other critters that are gonna attack your baits while you're trying to catch kingfish. So I like trolling better around structure.
What about just drifting, not even anchoring?
Love it. Love it. It's great. You know, that's his favorite way to fish.
So you say set your drag really light.
Yeah.
Have you ever had the instance where you backlash and bird's nest because it's taken so much because you set it too light?
I usually set it between 2 and 4 pounds is the what we used to say. You know, and I've never had it backlash unless you hit the lever and knock it into free spool, you know.
I know it's a violent attack and they run.
Yeah, but most of the time they'll just bend the rod over and double it over and start pulling out line, and it comes off the spool pretty evenly. And I've never had a chance where a fish has backlashed me unless it was in free spool.
Okay.
Here's what I'll tell you about that, okay? And this is what I talk about your different size baits, okay? I mean, you can have a blue runner this big or you can have one this big. So when you put him out, if you shoulder hook him, and he's gonna wanna swim, okay? So if he's pulling drag, you don't have quite enough drag on it, okay? That's what I'll tell you, okay? But I also wanna be able to take my hand and pull it.
Two fingers.
Right. So if you have a thread fin, you're not gonna have much drag, okay? If you got a big blue runner, you're gonna have a lot of drag. He's gonna wanna pull it out. So if he's pulling drag, you don't have a tight enough.
So it's mostly about the bait size.
Exactly.
Dictate what the drag is.
Exactly. So you're gonna let that fish wear his ass out. When he hits that blue runner or whatever he hits, he's gonna haul butt, and you're not gonna have a problem. If you have that loose, the bait would have already pulled it. Right.
Thank you.
One other thing Jimmy mentioned is shoulder hook and blue runners. What you can't do is you cannot shoulder hook a blue runner if you're gonna put it down on the downrigger.
Right.
It has to be nose hooked on the downrigger, otherwise you're gonna be pulling it out of the clip all the time. Also, you have to set the tension a lot of times on your downrigger clips so that your bait will pull out, you know, when a kingfish hits it, and not pull out when it's just swimming around.
One other question. You said when you anchor, you sometimes would chum. Now, if you're drifting, and that's what I mostly do, I see anchor drift sometimes. It's really, I only have a 20-foot boat. But do you still chum at that time sometimes?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, because you're creating a scent trail, and they'll follow it.
Thank you.
They'll come up to you.
What is your typical spread?
The typical spread that we run, we usually run 3 on top and 1 down. We'll put our, we usually run 1 really long. We call it China long, you know, and it'll be out there, and it depends on the bait that we have. If we're fishing a mackerel, it'll usually be somewhere just behind the prop wash. A lot of times we'll run a shoulder hook blue runner in the prop wash, and you'll watch that rod just go like this all day long. You know, it depends on how we've run as many as 6 lines at a time, and that was the maximum you could fish in an SKA tournament at one time. They changed the rules here and there, you know, but at one time you were allowed 6, and you were allowed what? 3 stingers or 4 stingers was all you were allowed. They had all different kinds of rules, but you know, I like Tom's rules.
I inherited them.
Yes, sir.
What are you using to catch the large blue runners?
What do you use to catch your big blue runners? It's a secret, he'll tell you. No, sometimes we use a chicken rig with a jig head, put some shrimp on it, just one at a time. Other times you'll use big sabikis.
Use the big sabikis. I mean, everyone knows all these little sabikis, okay? Use the bigger sabiki. I think it's
Number 15, I think.
it's a number 16. Cut it in half, and you're better have a 750 pin. When we go to Biloxi, you're not going to use 6 sabiki. Here, you won't use. You guys can pass this around. You'll only use 3 hooks, because with the 750 pin, it's all you can do to catch them. And don't be afraid to tip it. Put shrimp on it.
Yes, sir.
What line do you usually use? Like 30, 20, 50?
When we started out here, we used to use a maximum of 20-pound tests. We'd use 15, 18, 14, 20. And like I said, we were using 29-pound wire because we were using small baits. We wanted the flexibility. We want, you know, you stick a thread fin on 60-pound wire, he's not going to swim natural, you know. So first time I go down to Key West, You know, I go down there and I'm using 29-pound wire and 20-pound Teflon. Well, I got taught a lesson real quick, okay? I switched to 60-pound wire and, you know, because we were fishing big blue runners down there. And we switched, when we first went to Biloxi, the first time we went out there, we switched to 30-pound. Well, out there we were catching so many fish, we were having to bust off a lot of them. Because they'll come to the boat, you'll have a 40 in the box and you're catching 35s and you want to pop them off. Well, it's hard to pop them off on 30 pounds. 30 pounds is a really strong line, you know? We went down to 25, but we wanted to go up from 20. But that's the basic line that we use. We'll use now I tie a 40-pound leader, probably 8 foot of it, above my wire leader. In the old days, we used to use a double line. We used to just take our 20-pound test and we do a spider hitch and tie 8 foot. This was basically as an insurance policy against getting tail whipped. Because when the fish turns and is running, its tail will slap against that line. And we had many times where one strand of that double line would be broken. But we were lucky enough to be able to get the fish back up to the boat. Yep.
In this world of quads, 39s, 36s, you're a guy with a 26 single engine boat. And Nick, you can compete, because how many times have we seen the fish come from the flagpole? We've seen the fish come just inside the bridge. Give a mentality, what a game plan for a guy in that scenario. What gets out of bed at the crack of 4, he's going to be on his boat at 6, or be on his boat at 5, ready for the start of the tournament. Where's his mindset? Where's he thinking? Where's he going?
I think some of the important things you got to do is network, find out where fish are, if you can, from your friends, the ones that won't lie to you. But I know we're all fishermen.
And they lie.
How old was he
But
when he did?
it's really hard to compete against big boats. I realize that, but not in this tournament because you have the boundaries and everything else. And you can sit there, and there have been more fish caught in between the Skyway and Egmont than I've seen more 50-pounders come out of there than anywhere else. You know, my friend Brian Hasson over there told me the triple engine boat's gonna be the death of the Kingfish Trail. Wasn't that it, Brian? And now you got quads. And you got these gigantic boats out there that can run 70 miles an hour. You know, how do you compete against that? Luckily, you got a tournament where you don't have to run 70 miles an hour because you don't have to run for an hour. You can just go and you can fish local, fish traditional spots, Clearwater hard bottom. I mean, when we first started, there was the hard bottom, there was the drop, there was the 90-foot hole, there was the Skyway, there was the flagpole, there was the whistle if you were really chancy. And then I remember in the first national championship that was held here in St. Pete, they found this spot off the whistle called the Peaks. Now, Dan Casey could probably tell you a lot about that place, but that was where that championship in 1991 was won, was at the Peaks. It was,
We wanted to be champions. 7 years.
some more questions, anything?
I got one.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned tail whip against maybe the leader. So what kind of length on your steel leader?
My steel leader, that depends. I used to take one of these things and cut it in half. And that was the length of my lead hook.
cut the whole length in half?
No, I cut the whole spool in half,
Yeah, I
and
got it.
each one of whatever it was, maybe
Yeah.
12 inches, 11 inches, that would be my lead hook. I found out later on, another thing I learned down in Key West was when you're fishing in a deep current like that with big blue runners, they will sometimes swim up the line. And you'll get cut off because the kingfish will hit the blue runner and then he'll hit the line also. At that point, when I was fishing down there on the banana bar, we would switch to a 4 to 6 foot wire leader. But that's rare. We don't usually do that. But like I said, for the 40-pound test line that I would use, and a lot of people use fluoro. You know, I don't know whether fluoro gives you an advantage or not. I know that you pay a lot more for it at the tackle store, but I'd use 4 to 8 foot of the 40-pound, and I like to do that because if it pops, then you can just tie another rig on if you lose a foot of it or so.
6 to 8 foot of your wire leader.
No, my wire leader would, yeah, yep, that my
All the
lead,
other wire leader you have between your front hook and your leader. Your
yes,
final leader. That's
yes, yep,
A lot of controversy about that when you read.
oh yeah, yeah.
I mean, you talk about how long the leader is. And then you talk about all these king busters and shit you put in front of your bait and this, that, the other. Hell, I spent half the damn day getting weeds off them. So what's the difference? You know, it's on the East Coast. Yeah, apparently they were. Over here, I've never had any luck with them. You know, all the little ribbons that go over their bait, this, that, the other. I'm true natural, period. So I'm not a fan of a long leader by any means. I mean, when we first started, we were, like Randy said, we cut this in half. So it was 12-inch piece of wire, you know? And I will say that 95% of the fish that we've caught, 40, 50 pounders that we've thrown in the boat, the lead hook is in the kingfish's mouth. That stinger hook does nothing. If the stinger hook hits him in the skin, you're not going to catch him. So, I mean, to me, I don't know. People like to use. I've seen kite fishermen try it over here. I've seen all the things that they bring from the East Coast here. I've never seen it work. Like the ribbon fish, all that. The only place I know that I've heard that you could catch ribbon fish, which I consider like grass eels, is up in Clearwater. I mean, we've used them here to know, you know, they don't work. I mean, it's just not something that's here that the kingfish see on a daily thing. Ladyfish, mullet, shad, all that they see. So that's what we use. That's what we've done. Now, like I said, when Randy and I went other coasts, then we had to change the hatch, you know, because this is what they hit. This is what they like. So I don't have an answer whether the fish swim to Key West and some go that way, some go this way, you know. I don't know. I've never had luck other than matching the hatch. Whatever they use, we use.
Yes, sir.
What you guys use when the red tide's pretty bad? You guys use artificials, ribbon fish, or what was the go-to then?
It's red tides, you know, it's tough. It just, you know, you try to keep your bait alive. You try everything you can. You know, we've gone to air stones in the live well and turning off the seacocks and using it. Basically, we try and get out of it, you know, and go around it. I've never used any of the fake ribbon fish or anything like that. most of the time when your bait's in the red tide, I don't think the kingfish are gonna be around, you know? But sometimes it's real funny. You'll catch cigar minnows on the bottom, there'll be tons of them. You pull them up, you put them in the live well, they die because the red tide's on the top. You know, then basically you know that you want to run both those downriggers down as deep as you can get them with the live bait if you can manage to get the bait down there alive, you know. That's about the only thing you can do.
You guys don't run plugs or anything like that?
No, but you can catch kingfishes on plugs.
Yeah.
I mean, I can remember this scooped out metal thing that they called the King Getter, and we caught kingfish on that. And we've caught them on spoons.
Winning kingfish?
Not winning kingfish.
There you go. But it's the winning kingfish we're looking for.
Yeah, you got a point there. Pretty much, the winning fish is going to be caught on live bait. You know, but it can be caught right out there on the beach in a 26-foot boat or a 20-foot boat or a 17-foot boat. I can remember one year the Jacksonville Kingfish Tournament, there's a little hole right outside the inlet, and a kid in a john boat caught the winning kingfish. You know, that's what this tournament's about. You remember that?
How many winners have come in a 22-foot boat or smaller? I mean, think about it. I mean, my biggest thing is, you don't lead fish to find fish, okay? Traditionally, fall king fishing is tougher on the little guy than spring fishing. Spring fishing, you have the best chance because you don't have the weather, you don't have the cold fronts, you don't have the rough water, okay? So when the water gets dirty inshore, your offshore guys that can get out there have a better chance than you do. Okay, springtime, it's usually calmer, it's clean water, and the fish are coming up, they're following the bait, and all those baits are going in all those ports. So, to me, I way prefer springtime than fall, because the fall creates all this rough water, so it murks up the beach. In the last 2 months, the bait is so thick off the beach right now, other than this big blow we had. It was so thick out there, it was crazy. Yeah, exactly. So when you get those conditions and they push up to the bait, the beach, it's it's like, hello, McDonald's is open. Come on, kingfish. Boom. That's where they're going to be. Once it stirs up, they're gone. Boom. So, but I will say that the bait will go in the bay, and the fish will follow them in the bay, and it doesn't get as muddy as offshore on the beach. So if the beach is muddy, forget it. It's not going to happen. And I will tell you this: with the hurricane that went by, the bottom off of like Blinds Pass and all that has sanded over. All that sand is sitting offshore. It's the whole hard bottom, because I put traps out, and it's covered over. So it's going to take quite a while before it cleans out. We're going to have all these, northwest winds to clean it, push it back up. So King of the Beach will be different. It'll be different. The whole bottom's going to be changing in the Gulf right now. So you're going to have to do your homework. Find where the bait is. Find the bait, birds, then you'll be fine.
How much time do you spend pre-fishing?
Much as you can. I know it's hard with the job. You gotta work and gotta work out. I mean, sometimes we would get off work and go out in the afternoon and look around and see what we can see. The main thing to do is keep your eyes open. Look for that bait. Look for that bait on the machine. Look for birds diving. When you check out certain spots, it's very important. Another thing Jimmy said about the weather, when we were forming the first SIDS, first Kingfish Tournament in 1991, was 9 days long because we were afraid the cold fronts wouldn't let us get enough time in to fish. And that was pretty grueling, but we wound up fishing all 9 days.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
What's your thoughts and experience on kite fishing?
Kite fishing, Jimmy don't like it, I do. I've seen, but most of the kite fishing that I've seen good times with is on the East Coast. I mean, right off Trump's house, as a matter of fact, right off Mar-a-Lago, one of the best kite fishing spots between there and Palm Beach Inlet. But we have used it over here. I've seen Jackie and Stuart Hennenberger catch 40-pound, 50-pound fish on kites inside the bay. So, I mean, don't discount it. Another good place that I think to kite fish is the hole off at the dredge hole off Anna Maria. You know, there you get a lot of mackerel coming in, especially when the glass minnows are in there. And, you know, putting up a kite can really give you an advantage. The bait, you know, on the surface, it does draw attention.
Can you talk a little bit more about the strategy during the tournament day? Like, do you move a lot? Do you spend like really long time in one place? Do you start deep? Do you start shallow? Like, how do you think about this?
Well, I can tell you how he thinks about it. Because we fished the tournament, and we went to the 90-foot hole, and he said, we're fishing here all day Saturday and all day Sunday, and if we don't catch a fish, we're coming back on Monday. Now, if you have confidence in the place that you're fishing, like Dan Casey at the Peaks, you know, a lot of times knowing the bottom, knowing the structure that you're fishing, and by structure I don't mean wrecks, I also mean the bottom structure that you're looking at. If you feel confident in that and it's holding bait, why leave? I mean, sometimes they're just not chewing. They're there, they're just not eating. But an hour from now, you know, another thing that you have to look at, a lot of people go by the majors and minors and the Sol Lunar tables. And I gotta put some confidence in that too. And I never run from one spot to another during what they call a major feeding period, because I think I'm wasting my time if I'm doing that. I'd rather stay where I am or be where I'm gonna be when that major period starts.
I probably haven't caught a kingfish in 10, 15 years, because my job is I run the boat and I do exactly what he's talking about. I study the bottom and I run the boat. That's all I do. I chase the fish down, and when it becomes time, someone takes the wheel and I gaff the fish. I have not caught a kingfish in, I couldn't tell you how long, but that's my job. I run the boat, I catch bait, I know how to throw a cast net. I mean, I throw a 12-foot net, 20 pounds, you know, when we need to. Other than that, that's all I do is run the boat, study. Like I say, currents and how it affects baits. If I have to zigzag, I do. So that's my job. That's what I've always done, you know, since we've been, you know, on the circuit kingfishing. So everyone has their jobs. When you're tournament fishing, it's boring as hell. If you can ask my daughter, she's like, there's no fish here, there's no fish here. Yeah, there's fish here, but they're not eating yet. I'm like, trust me, I know what I'm doing. They're gonna bite sooner or later. And I will honestly tell you this. I'm like, why in the hell do we go out at 4 in the morning when I ain't caught a winning kingfish until 2, 3 in the afternoon? And that's the truth. It drives me crazy. But it's all for fun, so. But kingfishing, tournament kingfishing is boring. I can go out and catch kingfish all day long. But when you tournament fish, the bigger the bait, the better, and you're looking for one fish. That's all I can tell you.
Another thing, Jimmy, when he's talking about the bait, it's not just the bait on the surface. He's watching that depth finder constantly, watching the schools of bait, dragging your, you see these clouds of bait. You want to drag your downrigger bait, especially through that location, and the driver is, the most important person when that happens. You're just standing in the back of the boat, looking at the rods, and being ready. How often? If they look good, I don't mess with them that much. I'll pull them in and check them, but I'll put them right back out if they're swimming fine. Of course, when you get to be, what's your weigh in? 5 o'clock? Along about 2:30, I start putting out fresh baits every half hour. That, or if I'm catching bait, that fresh bait is going out right away. And that happens all day long, because I'll sit there and jig all day and put out the fresh baits. Anything else?
Are you staying at the bow when you're jigging as you're trolling?
Sometimes. Yep. Sometimes I'm alongside the center console, but don't jig on the same side as the downrigger.
What's your personal best?
What? 58.
Win you a tournament?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like that 58.
Oh, yeah. What was yours in that one, Brian?
52.
Oh, well.
I broke the tournament record. He comes up with the very next.
We got any, yes, sir.
You said you'll stay in the same location. If there's no bait there, you're not sitting there all day.
Oh, if there's no bait there,
You're leaving.
yeah. Yeah, I'm going to find where, I'll stay in the same location if it looks right, like I said, and you gotta watch your depth finder, watch bait on the surface, birds, you gotta keep your eyes open all times.
Kingfish are eating machines, and they're going to be where their food is. They don't want to travel. They just want restaurants open. They're eating machines. I mean, I can't tell you how many would have hit the deck and boom, barf up all kinds of bait that they've eaten. So if there's no food there, you're wasting your time. You can wait and wait. I mean, I'm not saying there has to be gobs and gobs of bait there, but there has to be a food source moving around, and see what I'm saying? Like up in G-Cut, which I don't know if everyone knows where it is. It's way up in Tampa Bay. Okay, so you have these two channels coming out where they swim up, and bait gets pushed by the tide. Okay, so as long as bait's moving through or whatever, yeah, they'll lay there, and they know that, yeah, when dinner time comes, something will come by and I'll eat. So I'm not saying it has to be thick with bait. So, but if say you're at the Skyway and you're gonna be going under the Skyway and back and forth, and you don't see any bait whatsoever, them fish ain't gonna be there. They gotta find food. They gotta eat just like you do. So, I mean, bait is key. That's what I'll tell you. Bait is definitely key.
And G-Cut somebody can get to in a 17-foot boat too, can't they, Tom? And how many times has it been won in G-Cut?
More times than I can count.
Yep, more times than you can count. Yep.
I got third in G-Cut not too long ago. So, but bait was there. Food's there. Food is key to kingfish, period. I mean, they'll keep on swimming, following it down all the way to the Keys. That's what they do. They come from the north and swim all the way down. So, luckily the bait swims in the bay, it swims in the channel, it loves it. So, as long as there's food, you're good to go.
First time I volunteered, we gave me a 16-foot Boston whaler one
guy away. And it was like 4 to 6.
Yep.
The old lead rockets.
Yep.
Any more questions?
How do you work this spot which holds bait? Like, do you circle around? Do you kind of pass and then go again?
Jimmy likes to follow the bait on the machine. And if the bait's, hanging on the structure, you can circle it, you can go through it, you can vary your trolling pattern because it's the way that you're presenting your bait that looks the best. And you look back at your bait, you see how they're swimming. If they're swimming fine, you can continue to do whatever you've been doing. Whether it's figure eights, whether it's circles, whether it's just trolling down a ledge line. Might see certain, you remember when we used to go out to the old trim getter and we would just follow the ledge and then spin around and then come back along it. It was just, and we'd watch it and watch the bait.
When it's rough out, okay, this is what I'll do, okay? If say the ledge is here, okay, I'll come up and then drift down. And this is when it's 4 and 6 foot. And I will actually drift and kind of just guide the nose of the boat and watch my bait in the wake behind me because it's so rough. So you have to drift, and then once I've passed over where the bait and I think the fish are, then we literally have to pick up and go back and do it again. So, and in North Carolina and stuff, I fished in 22-foot seas. I'd see a boat, and then I wouldn't see it. So you learn a lot of different drift patterns and things like that. Like I said, I was in the channel a couple weeks ago, and I was doing 3 knots, just drifting, because it was that moon tide. So I just shut the engine off. The only thing the engine did was keep the nose straight. So those are things. The other thing I'll tell you is, okay, so if you take the bait with the current, the bait will live. Okay, so if you want to go back, a zigzag. It's the only way to keep the bait alive and keep it healthy. So it's something to think about. Like I said, when you're tournament fishing and dragging live bait, you want that bait to go as slow as it possibly can. A lot of people, you listen to like Dave Zaleski and stuff where they troll, this knots and, it's all well and fine, but you're dragging spoons, which is not a bad thing. I've caught 30, 40-pound kingfish on spoons. But, like I say, here again, things have changed so much in the bait world that we use for kingfish now, and you're looking for one fish. So you got to keep them healthy. That's the key. You can't drag them dead. It just doesn't work. So if you have to go rebait, then go do it. Healthy bait is healthy fish.
Good. All right, thank you very much.
John's two of our past presidents right there. Captain Randy Keys and Jimmy Hasson. I'm sure they'll stick around for a little bit. It is past their bedtime, both of them.